Tuesday here in Berea, and the Browns cut their roster to its initial 53. Let's start there before we get to some of the news of the day. Let's each do a takeaway from the Browns' 53-man roster. Mary Kay, why don't you start us off?
You know, one of the things that I take away from what happened today is the fact that, people are freaking out that Austin Watkins is gone, and some of these other guys have been waived. But lo and behold, they will be back, some of them. They will definitely try to re-sign Austin Watkins to the practice squad. Same thing with Isaiah Thomas, Jalen Darden, and another very popular player over the past few days, Cade York. Kevin Stefanski acknowledged today something that I reported yesterday, that even though they cut Cade York today, they would like to have him back on the practice squad. They think that he's going to kick his way out of this slump, and they want to be there to reap the benefits.
Kind of have their cake and eat it too, I guess, when it comes to the kicking position. Ashley, what was your big takeaway?
I think my biggest takeaway is something that I wrote about today. It's the fact that two undrafted rookies basically played their way onto this roster, and I think we've seen it all throughout the preseason in Mahmoud Diabate. I'm going to get that right, Diabate. And Ronnie Hickman from, of course, the Ohio State safety. So the Browns keep 5 safeties, which I think is a great move, considering we're going to see a lot of 3 safety looks in Jim Schwartz's defense. And Diabate has been really good on special teams, too, which something was Andrew Berry acknowledged in the in-game broadcast against Kansas City. So I think all signs were pointing to him coming back. But it's 2 great stories, I think, for those guys.
Yeah, it's good to see a couple undrafted guys kind of push their way onto the roster based on how they played in camp and in the preseason. I'll just go with the story of Andrew Berry draft picks. Now, he did part ways with a few today. Isaiah Thomas out the door, Tommy Togiai out the door. As Mary Kay mentioned, we might see some of these guys back with the team, but Andrew loves to stick by those draft picks, and Mary Kay was telling us all along, David Bell's going to make this roster. He makes it. Alex Wright, of course, dealing with an injury. He makes it. Andrew Berry still very adamant about continuing to develop these recent draft picks and see what they can give this football team. Now, there was some news today, and really the big news and the feel-good story, Mary Kay, is Marquise Goodwin back on the practice field for the Browns.
I have been watching Marquise Goodwin since the day he danced his way onto the field at the Greenbrier Sports Complex in West Virginia, and he just set the tone. He was an inspiration for his fellow receivers and really everybody that was there, and he just has worn a smile on his face throughout all of training camp, even though he was sidelined with blood clots, which was a very scary thing. He called it alarming, but he's back out there now. It is the feel-good story of the summer for the Cleveland Browns, and to see him on that field against the Bengals, it's just going to be great for everyone.
Yeah, and Kevin didn't rule him out for Cincinnati. He didn't say he'd be ready for Cincinnati. That's just how Kevin's going to do this as we barrel towards week 1. He's not going to give us a whole lot. But Ashley, any young receiver you talk to, they always brought up Marquise Goodwin first as a guy that was in that room helping them along. And as Mary Kay mentioned, just all energy all the time.
I think so. I think you've seen these young receivers really kind of latch on to these vets. Cedric Tillman in particular, I know, has really praised him for helping him along. I know Marquise talked a little bit about that today. And he's also just a great story. Even going back to OTAs and minicamp when we've heard from him the first time and talking about his sister Deja, who lived with him for a time, who has cerebral palsy, who's a big influence in everything he does. I just think he's a great locker room guy, a great leader, and when you have a room full of young receivers, a guy like that is pretty valuable.
And we'll just mention here real quickly, Deshaun Watson and Elijah Moore not on the practice field today. They were both sick. They're expected to be back out there soon enough. So the Browns full speed ahead here to week 1 against Cincinnati. We'll have full coverage of everything that happened here in Berea at cleveland.com/Browns.